are currently 3 weeks into the new NBA season, and the 76ers currently have one of the worst records in the NBA. And I think it's safe to say no one expected this. Embiid hasn't played a game this season. Paul George, he's only played 4 and he has not looked great. Maxi's now also out a couple weeks with a hamstring injury. I think it's safe to say the process has already failed.
I mean, I'd say the process failed like 3 years ago. And also, I'd push back and say no one expected this. No one expected Embiid to be out injured?
Fair.
This is where we are now with the 76ers.
Before we talk about how the 76ers have been god-awful this year, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on any new videos. So last season, once again, the 76ers had the same storylines I think we've heard like the past 3 years.
That's like 7 years.
Yeah. First, it was Embiid being injured. The dude's always injured. I'll give him credit. He does play through these injuries, but he was hurt. He comes back versus the Knicks. And then the lack of postseason success. They go out in the first round, like I said, to the Knicks. Like in January, I thought for sure Embiid was going back-to-back for MVPs. He dropped that 70 bomb on Wemby. He looked like the clear favorite.
So naturally, he tears his meniscus.
Yeah, it had to happen, but he does come back right before the playoffs, plays versus the Knicks. I thought he was very good, but they fall to that New York team. Regardless though, they were gearing up to spend big money this offseason. They had over $60 million to spend, had basically no one re-signed besides Maxey and Embiid, and there were some pretty good players available. You had Paul George, Brandon Ingram was floated around as like a trade guy, OG, Lauri Markkanen, another trade guy, DeMar DeRozan. These aren't franchise-changing players at this point, but they're dudes who you can add to a big three and put together a pretty good roster.
Yeah, and they ended up managing to woo Paul George away from the Clippers after the Clippers didn't want to give him the max contract, so the Sixers lock him up to a 4-year, $212 million contract. Kind of a risk. I mean, PG's 34, he's going to be 35 by the end of the season, so when he's 37, he's going to be making $57 million a year, which is, oof, that's a lot of money on your books.
But at the same time, like, you pair him with Embiid, who's a perennial MVP candidate, top 5 player, like around that level, Maxey, one of the best young players in the NBA, like, that's a very good big three, and the rest of the supporting cast, like, it's not good, but I thought they did an okay job of just piecing players together. You draft Jared McCain before you even bring in Paul George, sign Andre Drummond, you bring back Kyle Lowry, KJ Martin, Kelly Oubre, sign Eric Gordon, sign Caleb Martin, sign Reggie Jackson, they signed that Yabusele guy who he dunked on, it was like KD in the Olympics, right?
Here you go again with your LeBron propaganda.
It wasn't LeBron.
He dunked on LeBron.
I would have remembered LeBron.
Just admit it. Just admit it. It's okay. It happens to everybody.
Like, was it a good supporting cast? No. Given the circumstances, I thought they did an okay job of bringing guys in, like, to at least make a serviceable group around that big three.
I mean, I guess I disagree with, like, the principles of the roster construction to begin with. Like, big threes are not a thing in the NBA anymore. Like, what's the last big three that worked? Like, the Warriors, probably?
I guess,
If you want to say Steph, Clay, and Durant.
And even to me, they don't even feel like your traditional big three because they grew through the draft and they had other guys like Iggy. Like, the last one I can really think of, I might even say like the Heatles.
Yeah?
Like, that you throw together in like one off season, I might think it's dumb.
And I mean, all the recent ones that we've had, like the Nets failed so far. I mean, the Suns so far have failed. They're playing well this year, but like the NBA now, it's like 2 stars and then a deep roster. And that's not what this 76ers team is.
And on top of that, they committed crazy money to this big three. Paul George, we just mentioned, 4-year, $212. Maxey got an extension, 5-year, $204. Honestly, that seems like a great move by them. And then Embiid gets 3 years, $192. So you're committing over $600 million to this new big three.
Still $100 million less than the Dodgers committed to Ohtani.
Hey, they at least got a title out of it, so.
So now on to the regular season, and before it even started, we got the report that Embiid's not going to be playing back-to-backs, and he may never again in his career. Like, I get the point is to maintain Embiid's health, but this is kind of my thing with, like, load management, is like, where's the evidence that it actually works? I get the principle behind it. I get the logic behind it. You're playing less, you're going to be, taking less hits, less wear and tear. But, like, all the guys who load manage are still consistently injured.
Yeah, the one like single year it kind of worked was 2019 Kawhi, but
it's 1 year.
Yeah, ever since then it hasn't worked for him. We saw it with the Suns last year. They had like guys out all the time. Didn't work at all. Now they got guys playing and it is working. So yeah, I didn't really agree with it. It kind of pissed me off. Unsurprisingly, he got criticized from, you know, your traditional bigs, those tough guys like Shaq and Kevin Garnett.
I mean, I guess I kind of appreciate it as like the paying customer. At least, you know, you don't have to shell out money for a back-to-back because you know Embiid's not going to be playing. So I appreciate it from that perspective. I know what I'm getting with my money, but I mean, come on, you're like in your early 30s and you're never going to play back-to-backs again.
That's crazy. He missed the entire preseason because of left knee management, so you got no time to build chemistry with Paul George. On top of that, him and Paul George were out opening night. Embiid was still dealing with that knee soreness, the knee management. Paul George had a bone bruise. So you got two players out of the $600 million big three not playing. Obviously, you're not going to have a good start.
Money well spent.
Yeah. Because of that, the NBA investigates this Embiid situation and tack on another $100K for this because they didn't violate the protocols, but apparently those public comments, they did violate the protocols with that. They lose their opener to the Bucks, lose at Toronto. They do have a nice overtime win in Indiana. Maxey was huge that game, had 45, big for them in the overtime. And then you lose back-to-back games, first to the Pistons, then to the Grizzlies. And then we got that altercation with Embiid and Marcus Hayes from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Like from Embiid's perspective, you can't touch him. Like you gotta know better. It's tough, but at the same time, I kind of get why the dude was furious.
Oh, I mean, look at the statement that Marcus Hayes wrote. I mean, it's as low a blow as you can possibly say. Like, I get where he's coming from. He's trying to say like, oh, Embiid, you know, I guess he thinks he's lazy or whatever, but like, don't bring up his brother and his son. Like, if you just want to say that you think the dude's lazy, just be like, hey, Embiid, you're robbing the paying customers by not playing every day. Like, don't invoke his family member's name. Like, ugh, disgusting.
Yeah. And I think that's also kind of unfair because like Embiid's the one guy who's been there in Philly. Like Ben Simmons quit on the team. Harden basically quit on the team. Like at least Embiid's been there.
And like you said earlier, like to his credit, he tends to play through stuff in the playoffs at the very least. Like played through like an orbital fracture in his face,
like twice.
Yeah, his knee injuries, the Bell's palsy thing. Like even when he's dinged up in the playoffs, he tends to try to play through it.
Yeah. So Embiid got suspended 3 games for that, so he's out the next 3 games. Did get Paul George back. Problem is, dude has not looked good so far. Like it's still early. We're recording this before the Hornets game. Maybe he torches them and it turns the page, but
maybe.
So far to me, him and that Philadelphia with the 8 number just
doesn't work.
Yeah, like we're gonna look back 10 years from now and that's gonna be in those like wash montages. Like, I'm sorry, I can just see it now.
So yeah, he's back for that Phoenix game. I mean, really should have won this game. They were up 9 with just 5 minutes to left, but they completely choked it. And then back-to-back games in LA against the Clippers and the Lakers. The Clippers game was like the one game where PG looked pretty good. You know, 18 points on 7-9 shooting in 24 minutes. But you lose Maxey in that game to a hamstring injury. Now he's going to be out for a couple weeks. Then you go on the road to the Lakers and you lose. It feels pointless to like talk about like, oh, what's wrong with the team? What's wrong with you? Like the team's not there. Like color me shocked that when you miss, you know, Paul George for a couple games and Embiid the whole season and now Maxey's going to be out, that the performance of the team is going to suffer.
So now let's talk about the future of this team. We'll talk about like the rest of this season and then maybe a couple years down the road. I mean, the thing that actually pisses me off is they could easily turn things around. Like,
because the East is so bad.
Yeah, they're 3 games out of the 3rd seed. Even if they do lose to the Hornets, like they still at max will be like 4 games out of the 3rd seed. You could easily turn that around when you got like 70 plus games remaining.
All you need is like a 7-8 game win streak.
Yeah,
and you're back in business.
Like they legit could easily get in the playoffs and avoid the play-in. Like they were a play-in team last year. They could avoid that this year just because the East is that bad. But you do have to wonder, are they going to keep this Embiid like load management back-to-back strategy moving forward? Especially now that Maxey's out a few weeks. Like you might have to play in.
I mean, they've been doing it for 7 years. Why would they change now?
I guess. I guess that's fair. I'm assuming Paul George, like given his injury status in the past, he'll probably miss some more games. I'd love to see them miss the playoffs just because after this bad start, they deserve it. But to be honest, if I had to bet, they're still probably a playoff team.
No, I think they're still a playoff team. Yeah, I think once Embiid comes back, Paul George, you know, figures out where he fits in the offense. I mean, they're going to get better. They're not going to be the worst team in the Eastern Conference. Like they're just not. But I mean, are they going to be a championship contender with this core, with these guys who are always out injured? I mean, doesn't look like it.
No. So what do you guys think? Is there still time for the 76ers to turn this thing around? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like, and hey, while you're here, check out some of our other content as well. Don't forget to subscribe to Synthetic Sports.